All right, let's dive straight into this explainer. Today, we're taking a seriously terrifying journey straight down into the crushing depths of our very own oceans to see exactly how extreme environments create absolute biological nightmares.
But hey, before we start our descent, I want you to ask yourself a question. Are the monsters from sci-fi and horror movies actually just mimicking the perfectly evolved survival machines swimming right beneath us? Because as we go layer by layer today, you're going to see that nature's reality is far, far stranger than fiction.
Section 1. The Deceptive Sunlight Zone. We're starting off in relatively familiar waters here, but you really shouldn't let the light fool you. These creatures hide absolute horrors right behind their normal or even beautiful exteriors.
Okay, so even in the sunniest, most inviting waters, extreme survival is happening right under our noses. Take the tongue-eating louse, for example. It literally enters through a fish's gills, severs the blood vessels to the tongue so it falls off, and then attaches itself to act as the fish's completely new living tongue. I mean, wow. Then there's the blue dragon. It's this tiny, beautiful slug that hunts the deadly Portuguese man-o'-war, rips off its stinging cells, and weaponizes that stolen venom in its own fingers. And if that isn't wild enough, consider the bobbit worm. We're talking about a completely blind, 10-foot-long nightmare buried in the sand. The second its antennae are brushed, it erupts upward, snapping these scissor-like jaws with enough force to cleanly slice a fish completely in half. Now, get ready for an incredible and honestly deeply disturbing example of mind control, the life cycle of a parasitic barnacle. This thing doesn't just attach to a crab, it finds a weak spot and injects a blob of cells that grows into this sprawling root network, wrapping entirely around the crab's organs and brain. It chemically castrates the host, and if the crab is male, it actually alters its hormones to make it act female. Finally, it pushes an egg sac out, literally turning the host into a devoted zombie bodyguard that spends the rest of its life lovingly protecting the parasite's eggs as if they were its own.
What's wild about this sarcastic fringehead is the total contrast. Most of the time, it's just this unassuming, kind of funny-looking fish hiding out in discarded bottles. But the second its territory is threatened, its face completely unhinges and splits open like the monster from Stranger Things. Rivals will press these massive, terrifying mouths together, literally wrestling mouth to mouth to see who backs down first. It's just unbelievable.
Moving on to Section 2, Horrors of the Twilight Zone. As the light fades and food becomes incredibly scarce, we sink deeper. Here, evolution forces jaws to stop being just for chewing, and instead they become extreme biological weapons.
So, as things get darker, these predators have to get creative. The goblin shark, for instance, detects faint electrical fields and literally slingshots its detached jaw entirely out of its face to snap up prey. Then you have the stoplight loose jaw, which uses bioluminescence totally differently than most. Since almost no deep-sea creatures can see red light, it shines an invisible red sniper laser to spot victims before shooting out a bottomless, fleshless jaw to impale them. And of course, there's Sloane's viperfish. Its teeth are so ridiculously large it actually holds a Guinness World Record. If it tried to close its mouth normally, those fangs would pierce its own brain, so they just slide up the outside of its face instead.
This next one perfectly explains why the pram bug is widely rumored to be the visual inspiration for the xenomorph queen in the movie Alien. This creature finds a barrel-shaped, gelatinous animal called a sulp, uses sharp claws to systematically carve out and eat its internal organs while the poor thing is still alive, and then literally hollows out the fleshy corpse. Why? So it can climb inside, lay its eggs, and use it as a living, drivable minivan for its young. Just brilliant, but so creepy.
And, well, if life wasn't hard enough in the pitch black of the Twilight Zone, meet the Traplernopad copepod. Yikes. This horrifying crustacean swims through the dark, zeroes in on a fish, and roots directly into its eyeball. It blinds the fish, permanently dangling its twin egg sacs from the ruined socket, all while constantly draining fluids from the host's head for the rest of its life.
Section 3, Monsters of the Midnight Zone. Plunging even deeper into this total void, we find an environment where finding a meal or a mate is nearly impossible. This leads to adaptations that utterly defy all logic.
You know the deep-sea anglerfish for its iconic glowing lure, right? Well, their mating process is pure, tragic body horror. Finding a mate down here is so incredibly rare that when a tiny male finally finds a massive female, he bites in and releases a special enzyme. This dissolves his mouth and her skin, permanently fusing their blood vessels together. Over time, his eyes, fins, and organs just melt away until he literally ceases to exist as an individual. He becomes nothing more than a permanent parasitic sperm bank for the female.
Now picture a massive whale dying and sinking into this darkness. This creates what's known as a whale fall, and this sudden, massive feast attracts zombie worms. Now these are creatures with no mouths, no stomachs, and no teeth. Instead, they secrete this highly potent bone-dissolving acid just to reach the marrow inside. The females eat the marrow with root-like tendrils, while dozens to hundreds of microscopic males live permanently imprisoned inside her gelatinous tube, just waiting to fertilize her eggs.
Down in the midnight zone, survival methods are incredibly unique. The siphonophore, for instance, isn't even one animal. It's a sprawling 150-foot superorganism made of thousands of mutated clones that physically link up to form a giant, venomous, glowing net of death. Then you have the colossal squid, which is actually heavier and more dangerous than the giant squid, armed with dinner plate eyes and swiveling razor-sharp hooks to violently fight off sperm whales. And we can't forget the pelican eel, which basically looks like Jaws on a whip, swallowing massive amounts of water whole, like a parachute, to catch prey that was attracted by its glowing pink tail.
10 times. That staggering number represents the mass of prey that 10-inch black swallowerfish is willing to consume. Because meals are so rare, it grabs a victim, unhinges its jaw, and walks its mouth right over the prey to swallow it whole. But sometimes it gets so ambitious that the massive prey actually begins to decompose in its stomach. The resulting gases from that decay inflate the swallower like a balloon, floating it violently to its death at the ocean's surface.
Section 4. Nightmares of the Abyss. We're crossing into an environment so brutally cold, dark, and scarce that animals start treating the very concept of standard biology as a mere suggestion.
A prime example of what happens down here is deep-sea gigantism. Take the giant sea spider, which grows up to 20 inches across. That's the size of a dinner plate. But because they're essentially entirely made of legs, they don't have a body large enough to actually hold their organs. So to solve this, they literally store their digestive tracts and reproductive organs inside their legs. Imagine storing your stomach in your shin. They just stalk the seafloor, thrusting a large tube directly into animals to suck out their internal juices.
Okay, let's walk through an absolutely nightmare-inducing hunting sequence. The pelagic abyssal ribbonworm is completely eyeless and faceless. When it detects prey, its entire forehead splits open and it violently explodes a massive, muscular, inside-out throat straight from its head. It wraps around the victim, stabs it to inject a neurotoxin that liquefies the prey's internal organs while it's still alive, and then just drinks the melted soup like a straw, leaving behind only a hollow, floating skin husk.
It's genuinely fascinating to see how life adapts to utter starvation. Take the xenophore. These are single-celled amoebas scaled way up to dinner plate size. They survive by building armored shells out of their own glued-together poop, acting as biological sponges that absorb massive amounts of toxic heavy metals like uranium and lead. And speaking of sponges, the carnivorous abyssal sponges totally abandon filter feeding. They trap crustaceans on Velcro-like glass hooks, and then their individual cells physically migrate through their own body to swarm and dissolve the animal alive.
Section 5. The Bottomless Trenches. We finally hit rock bottom. Welcome to the trenches, where survival is sustained only by raining dead matter and the ocean's most crushing, completely unimaginable pressure.
At an unbelievable depth of 20,381 feet, researchers spotted the Magnapinna squid. It's the deepest dwelling squid ever recorded. It just eerily hovers there, motionless, with these 26-foot-long spider-leg tentacles acting as a giant living drift net, just waiting for creatures to blindly collide with it in the total darkness. Down here, trench life completely throws the rulebook out the window. You have the Hirondelia gigas, which are millions of hyper-aggressive pale crustaceans that form cannibal swarms to strip carcasses to the bone in a matter of hours. And they'll even eat each other if food runs out. You have these flattened comb jellies anchored to the trench walls, tossing out microscopic, explosive biological tripwires into the void. And the Hadal sponeworm, which slithers a massive, flat tongue 10 times its body length across the mud. And final twist of horror, if a larva lands on that tongue, contact alone chemically mutates it into an eyeless, microscopic male permanently imprisoned inside her body. And down at an astounding 27,000 feet lives the Mariana snailfish. Its skin is so completely clear you can actually see its organs functioning inside. But its ultimate display of biological adaptation is its structure itself. It is literally held together by the crushing weight of the trench.
If you try to bring it up to the surface, without that immense pressure pinning its structure together, it loses all integrity and literally melts into a puddle of gelatinous liquid goo.
Well, we've reached the end of this explainer, but considering we have barely even scratched the surface of our own ocean floor, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. If these bizarre, melting, mind-controlling, and terrifying organisms are what evolutionary perfection looks like in the crushing dark, what other alien horrors are waiting out there in the pitch black, just waiting to be discovered?